On the morning of April the 9th, 1682, René Robert Cavalier de La Salle sees a miraculous sight. For more than a dozen years, he has dreamed of this day. Now he has become the first Frenchman to reach the Gulf of Mexico, traveling overland. Next, he is sure he will find the mysterious Western Sea and the treasures of China.
I do now take, in the name of His Majesty, possession of this country of Louisiana, from the mouth of the great river called Ohio, as also along the river Mississippi, and rivers which discharge themselves therein.
But La Salle's grand ambitions are at odds with France's colonial plans. In Paris and Quebec, he is considered dangerous, perhaps even mad. Louis XIV writes to the governor at Quebec.
I am convinced, as you are, that the Sieur de La Salle's discovery is quite useless, and that in the future we must forbid such enterprises.
But La Salle will not be denied. He will continue his quest for glory at all costs. Fraud, deceit, even murder.
Vive le roi! Vive le roi!
It seems an impossible task. A few hundred young men of New France setting out to claim an entire continent. But with courage, determination, and sometimes folly, they learn to make their way down rivers and through the dark forests of the New World. The Canadians learn to build alliances with powerful Indian nations and become masters of the West, keeping their New England rivals penned up along the Atlantic shore. On the banks of the St. Lawrence, they build a new society, shaped by the wilderness and its wild air of freedom. But it will not be long before a clash of empires throws the continent into turmoil once again. In the years after 1670, hundreds of young Frenchmen set off on a great adventure. They leave the St. Lawrence colony for the world of the Indians, seeking a fortune in the fur trade. For these young men, the freedom of the upper country is irresistible.
The life of the coureur des bois is one of perpetual idleness. They live in complete independence. They are accountable to no one. They recognize neither superior, nor judge, nor laws.
New France is still a fragile colony, outnumbered 10-1 by the English settlers to the south. The coureurs de bois are ignoring direct orders to stay along the St. Lawrence, orders from Jean-Baptiste Colbert, France's colonial minister.
It would be best to restrict ourselves to an area of land that the colony can maintain on its own, rather than expanding over an area so vast that, someday, we may have to abandon part of it.
Colbert has reason to be worried. The English in New York have a powerful ally of their own, the Iroquois, giving them rum and muskets in exchange for furs. Albany is now an important trading post, competing with Montreal and Quebec. France now sends the colony a new governor, Louis Bouade, Comte de Frontenac. His orders are to consolidate the St. Lawrence settlement. But Frontenac does the exact opposite. He has a trading post built on far-off Lake Ontario and then tries to lure the Iroquois away from Albany.
The settlement that I'm starting, I expect to make sizable in very little time. And merchandise will be brought there so that you will not have to carry your pelts as far as you do now. You will find all kinds of refreshments and commodities that will be given to you at the best prices possible. You will be treated as Frenchmen.
The Indians flock to Fort Frontenac, and the governor keeps most of the profits himself. Not only the English are upset, even the French merchants have a new competitor. The intendant, Jacques Duchesneau, complains to the court.
Everybody boldly contravenes the king's interdictions. I have enacted ordinance against the coureurs des bois, against the merchants who furnish them with goods. All of that has been in vain, as several of the most considerable families in this country are involved, and the governor lets them go on and even shares in their profits.
One of Frontenac's closest associates is René Robert Cavalier de La Salle, the son of a wealthy family from Rouen. La Salle comes to New France in his 20s after leaving the Jesuit order because, he said, of his moral frailties. Together, he and Frontenac defy their church and their king. The fur trade is based on giving the Indians the commodities they most desire. The Indians are astonished by the consciousness-altering effects of alcohol. And French traders are only too willing to provide it. The results are devastating. So devastating that the church threatens to excommunicate anyone who traffics in alcohol. But commercial competition has its own morality. Cavalier de La Salle and his partner, the governor, defy the church.
It is for laymen only, and not for clergymen, to determine what is good or bad for commerce. The sole purpose of the savages is to sell it to their people, which is the only reason that forces them to come to us.
Finally, Louis XIV has had enough. Frontenac is recalled to France. Meanwhile, La Salle builds alliances with the different Indian nations of the interior, extending the French trading network all the way to the mouth of the Mississippi. But when he returns to Quebec, he too is ordered back to France. La Salle is not ready to give up his dreams of glory yet. He lies to the king, telling him Louisiana is full of rich silver mines. He falsifies his maps, showing the mouth of the Mississippi much farther west than its actual location. He argues that this is an ideal place from which to attack the Spanish in New Mexico. The deception succeeds. The king names La Salle commandant of all the territory he has claimed and puts him in charge of 320 men and 4 ships. But many of the officers don't trust La Salle.
There are very few who do not believe he is crazy. I have spoken of it to people who have known him for 20 years. Everyone says that he has always been something of a visionary.
Under La Salle's erratic leadership, the expedition goes disastrously wrong. In March 1687, La Salle is wandering in a dense area of Texas, completely lost. Several of his men are dead. The rest are exhausted. On the morning of March 19th, a disgruntled merchant traveling with the party brings La Salle's dreams of glory to an end. Henri Joutel was La Salle's friend and right-hand man.
Cavalier de La Salle had the mind and the talent to succeed. His courage, his boundless capacity for work, which allowed him to overcome all obstacles, would have brought him a glorious triumph in the end, had it not been that all these qualities were matched by an imperious manner and a harshness towards his subordinates, which brought him their implacable hatred, and was the cause of his death.
In less than 20 years, La Salle and others, Joliette, Nicolas Perrot, Duluth, have reached far into the interior. New France's Indian alliances have made it the master of half a continent. But the English, like Thomas Dongan, the governor of New York, have expansion plans of their own.
'Tis a hard thing that all countries a Frenchman wax over in America must belong to Canada.
In Europe, France and England are at peace, but in their North American colonies, tension is growing. The governor of New York urges the Iroquois to resist the French and their Indian allies.
The king, my master, has forbidden me from providing you with arms and munitions to use against the French. But do not be alarmed by this. You will want for nothing that you may need. I will rather supply you at my own expense.
Among the nations of the West, the Illinois, the Ottawa, the Fox, and others, New France has built a complex network of friendship and alliance. Their support is essential to the colony's trade and expansion. One of the most influential French ambassadors to the Indians is Nicolas Perrot. Perrot strives to keep New France's allies united.
There is no nation that does not have some reason to go to war against the others. When they were looking for reasons to go to war against each other, did I not convince them that instead they should support each other against the Iroquois, who are their common enemy?
His most important task is to convince the Indians it is in their interest to support the French, not the English.
When the English tried to lure them, I told them that they were about to enter into an alliance with traitors who had poisoned part of the nations that lived among them, and that, after having intoxicated the men, they had kidnapped their women and children and sent them to faraway islands, from which they would never return.
But Frontenac's adventurism has upset the delicate balance, leaving New France too weak to defend its allies. The Iroquois take advantage, sowing terror among the nations of the West. The intendant Jacques Duchesneau recognizes the danger.
There can be no doubt that if the Iroquois are allowed to continue unchecked, they will subdue the Illinois, and in a short time they will make themselves the master of all the Ottawa nation and take the fur trade to the English. So it's a necessity to make them friends or to destroy them.
For more than 20 years, New France's diplomacy has protected the colony from Indian attacks. But in May 1689, France and England declare war. In North America, the English of New York are first to hear the news and immediately tell their Iroquois allies. The Iroquois have been rivals of New France for much of the last 80 years. They consider the French system of alliances a potent threat to their security and their territory. In New France, no one knows that war has been declared. Most Canadians still live in unfortified villages, like La Chine, near Montreal. August 5th, 1689. "1,500 Iroquois warriors attack La Chine. 24 settlers are killed, most of the houses destroyed, more than 70 people taken prisoner." The superior of the Sulpicians of Montreal, Vachon de Belmont, describes their fate.
That unfortunate group of prisoners bore the full fury that a cruel thirst for vengeance can bring out in these savages. This victorious army took them across Lake Saint-Louis. There, they lit fires, burned 5 Frenchmen, roasted 6 children and some of the others, and ate them.
Only 2 months later does the colony learn that France and England are at war. The best young officers are needed back in Europe, so Frontenac is named governor once again. His orders are to attack the English settlements in New York. But Frontenac cannot mount a full-scale offensive. Instead, he relies on guerrilla raids by Canadian militiamen and Indian allies. Among the war party are the coureurs de bois, Nicolas Daibou de Montet, and the brothers Jacques Lemoine de Sainte-Hélène and Pierre Lemoine d'Iberville. Their objective, the village of Schenectady. A force of 200 in all, half French, half Indian. They arrive after midnight on February the 18th. There is no guard, and one of the gates has been left unlocked.
A company of 200 French and Indians fell upon said village and murdered 60 men, women, and children most barbarously.
The dead of La Chine are avenged. Now it is Peter Schuyler, the mayor of Albany, who laments the brutality of frontier warfare.
The cruelties committed at said place no pen can write nor tongue express. The women being with child, ripped up, and the children alive thrown into the flames, and their heads dashed in pieces against the doors and windows.
The Canadians and their allies strike virtually at will, at Salmon Falls, on the Atlantic coast, and at Falmouth. The English colonies are terrified. It is time for a new strategy, a frontal assault. Under the command of Sir William Phipps, a powerful fleet sails from Boston. First, it destroys Port Royal in Acadia. Then, on October the 16th, all 34 ships appear before Quebec. For the second time in its short history, Quebec is under siege. The next day, Phipps sends an emissary to demand that Quebec and the whole colony surrender. Frontenac is given 1 hour to capitulate.
I have no reply to make to your general, other than from the mouths of my cannons and muskets. Let him know that this is no way to summon men such as myself.
The English land 1,000 men at Beauport, but they are pushed back by the Canadian militia. After 3 days, the siege is over. Cold weather forces the fleet to leave before it is imprisoned in the ice. The war continues for 7 more years, but the English colonists will not attempt to invade Canada again. And the peace that follows will neutralize their greatest ally.